I really wanted to start this video by singing about kung fu fighting, but then I thought that's maybe a little bit on the nose. Hi, my name is Sydney. Welcome back to hell. I feel compelled to tell you all that my hair is wet, so you're gonna watch it progressively dry throughout this video. And I also want to tell you that it's been storming crazily here in DFW, and I didn't sleep much last night, so I'm feeling a little bit like Jack from The Shining. Being woken up by Murphy and no sleep makes Sydney a dull boy. Murphy's my dog, for those of you who are new here. Also, and I'm sorry I keep bringing it up, I just really don't want to throw away any tea. I'm still running my 50% off sale on my website for Earl Grey, New York Breakfast, and Emerald Green, because those are the flavors that are expiring mid to late November, and I don't want to throw any tea away. So if you like tea, go check out my website, links in the description box. So let's talk about this right-wing conservative infighting that we are currently seeing, particularly on Twitter. Because why the heck not? Now on Twitter, I definitely will weigh in on this type of thing, but on YouTube, I typically don't because my content doesn't really revolve around these kind of topics. But I feel quite strongly about some of the things that I'm seeing play out right now, and this video topic just happened to make its way onto the list that I put together recently, so here we are, and there's nothing you can do about it. It goes without saying, but obviously I'm not gonna hit every single thing associated with this topic. I'm just focusing on the things that I think really matter here, the primary points I think really matter, but I am incredibly curious to hear all of your perspectives on this. I'm really looking forward to reading your comments because I think a lot of you have really great takes, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to what you have to say. Obviously, this is not a cult, so if you do find yourself disagreeing with me, just write me a comment and explain why. Just be nice about it, Steven. So for those of you who don't know the context here, basically all of this started a couple weeks ago when Matt Walsh made a series of tweets. Matt Walsh is a commentator at the Daily Wire. But his commentary started back in mid-September after Charlie Kirk was murdered. During an episode of his podcast, Walsh said that violence was a left-wing problem and that he's done with the rhetoric about both sides having problem people.
If you had asked me 8, 9, 10 years ago, I probably would have said that extremists on both sides are the problem and they're equally bad. If you can imagine me saying something like that now, I know it's hard, but I did a long time ago, years ago. I don't know how any conservative could possibly still hold that view.
Now, this I agree with. I do think that left-wing violence is becoming more and more prominent, and that's been exemplified over the last number of years. And I also think it's always worth remembering that when statistics about right-wing violence are released and put forward, usually they include a litany of things, including Islamic terrorism and other religious-based attacks and violence. So do with that what you will. He follows up by saying that we need to put the infighting to the side, that we can pick it up later, but for now we need unity due to the existential threat that is the left.
Now, I can tell you where there should be unity. There should be unity on the right among conservatives. And this is a message that I've preached a few times in the last few days on X. That as conservatives, we need to put the petty squabbles and the infighting and all that crap to the side. We can get back to that later. And I'm sure we will. You know, we can resume our family feuds sometime down the line. But for now, we don't have time for it. We can't bother with it. We're dealing with a real existential threat. We're dealing with enemies of civilization. So we got to put all that stuff to the side.
And this is more or less the same thing that he's been tweeting about over the last number of months, but more specifically in this case, over the last number of days. On October 17, Walsh tweeted that he'd asked for unity and has instead been relentlessly attacked by conservatives. He said, "I've made the exact same call to unity many times in the past without anything close to this kind of blowback. Very strange." Somewhat in response, Seth Dillon of the Babylon Bee tweeted, "You should be willing to lose friends for the sake of what's good and true, and friends who can't tolerate honest correction without treating you as a traitor aren't really friends anyway. I'd argue they're holding you hostage." Walsh quote tweeted this, saying that he considers loyalty to be a very important principle and he won't denounce his friends, not because he's afraid to, but because he considers it an act of treachery. He goes on to add that debating and disagreeing is one thing, but condemning his friends is not an option. option. You want to know what's also not an option? Getting no sleep, like I did last night. But that wouldn't have happened if I'd had my favorite sleeping hot chocolate, Dream. So I think it has been pretty well established that I am a huge fan of Dream's Night Hot Cocoa. Lately, I have been taking the Dream tablets before bed because they have the same great ingredients, but tonight I wanted a hot drink, so the hot cocoa it is. Dream has been one of the only sleep aids that has actually worked for me, to the extent that I actually just had another friend of mine buy some after I hyped it up to him. He's also been having a ton of trouble sleeping. I just genuinely believe in what this product does. For me, I don't get any weird, horrible morning grogginess, which is such a blessing because that's always been one of my issues. I don't get any weird dreams when I drink it, and now that I have been drinking it for a while, it's only gotten more effective, so I go to sleep and I stay asleep. I make my hot chocolate concoction about an hour before bed and have an insanely good sleep. And I just really like what's in this. The reishi, the L-theanine, the magnesium. I personally like the melatonin option, but you can always get it without if that's what you'd prefer. So guess what? You too can get better sleep with exclusive early access to Beam's Black Friday sale with up to 50% off for a limited time. So click the link in the description or go to shopbeam.com/SydneyW and use code SydneyW at checkout. This is by far Beam's biggest sale of the year and the best deal I've been able to share, so don't miss out. Check out Beam today. Now, there was a lot of backing and forthing from quite big creators and quite big commentators in the right-wing/conservative space with relation to this topic and this issue. There was a lot of sort of disagreement taking place. But what really emerged from this, or what became clear as people responded to one another, is that there are two primary camps. Those who think like Matt Walsh, who kind of sit on his side of the aisle, who believe that we need to unify on the right. And I suppose that means unifying with ideas and concepts that we don't really like, or maybe we would ordinarily disagree with. Then there are those who believe that unifying with our own crazies is ultimately a bad idea. And personally, I can see both sides of the aisle here. If unifying means putting aside silly infighting to focus our energy on bigger issues, then sure. If you're fighting an army, your army cannot be fractured or split into factions. So I do, for the most part, understand this position. But if unifying means ignoring terrible, disgusting rhetoric and dangerous behavior like the left has done for years now, then you can count me out. Which I think is probably what most of you thought I was going to say here. So surprise, it's me. Saying things I always say. You know, it's sort of funny because I actually just had this conversation with my mum the other day because she and I very much diverge on specific issues these days, and that's okay. I still love my mum. She's one of my favorite people, but she made a point where she said that she doesn't really view politics anymore through the lens of left versus right, but rather normal people versus, you know, evilness, I suppose. Mum, don't get mad at me for misquoting you, I'm sorry. But I do think that there is some truth to that. On this channel, I will often make a very clear distinction between the right and the left because it just makes conversation a lot easier. But in practice, there is, I think, a huge difference between somebody who is, say, center left and somebody who is radically progressive. Radical progressives, by and large, I have nothing in common with, but say somebody who is classically liberal, I probably do. And in some cases, I have more in common with the classic liberal than I do with someone who's far right. And that is because I think, for the most part, people don't fall neatly into boxes. You might have somebody on the left or the right who agrees with, you know, a political position or a commentator or whoever 80% of the way, but then 20% of the time they disagree. Or maybe we just decide where we stand on each issue as it arises, and that's very normal too. I think that's where the majority of the population fall when it comes to political issues. They're not 100% right-wing, they're not 100% left-wing, they're somewhere in the middle. And that, I think statistically speaking, is fairly accurate. So with that said, in a way, maybe this conversation is less about left versus right, and more about normal people versus extremism. But what Walsh is preaching, at least in my opinion, is the sort of thing that got the left where it is today. It didn't shine a light on its nut jobs, it didn't combat its nut jobs, and now their ideas have become the loudest when your average person simply doesn't agree with them. Their response to Charlie's death, their celebration of violence and terror, is what pushed so many liberals even recently away from them and woke a lot of people up. With this in mind, when I say the left, you don't think of normal people who are more socially liberal but also hate paying taxes. You think of purple-haired they-thems who show their buttholes to the sun despite Trump or something. You think of people who act like this.
I'm having this conversation over on my Instagram right now, and the question is, for fat people, what do you think is most appropriate for thin people to refer to you or the fat community?
And it's because liberals allowed these people to become the loudest in the room. And really, this is where one of my primary concerns comes from. I am worried that a united right will inevitably become blind to its own crazies in the same way the left did. At one time, big conservative voices, and you know what? Even little conservative voices, even everyday conservative voices, were being censored and silenced. There was an observable, coordinated, concerted attempt by the mainstream media and by Democrats to shut down actually like completely milquetoast regular conservative and right-wing talking points. Normal everyday people with normal everyday beliefs and ideas were being fired and harassed and doxxed. And largely this was happening because they just weren't towing the line. They weren't falling in line with what they should have been doing and saying online and in their private and work lives, I suppose. And a lot of this was completely unacceptable and completely unfair, and so there was a legitimate need for us to come together and support one another because people were being targeted for the tiniest of infractions. You know, you don't use the correct pronoun and now suddenly you have to do 5 billion hours of gender diversity training. I feel so bad for those of you in the corporate world, man. This doesn't sound fun at all. But thankfully, I think that this is less and less the case now. And I think, A, it's because there's a really big social shift happening, but more importantly, because people called it out collectively for years and years and really pushed for change. But despite this change, and I'm not saying for a second that this doesn't continue to happen, I know that it does, but there's a lot of people in the media world who like to take this past situation and apply it now and hide behind it, using it as a shield. When some right-wing figures who may or may not have terrible ideas, who is to say I'm not the arbiter of that kind of thing? When these people are attacked and have, you know, a lot of disagreement being lobbied at them, they typically will ignore the criticism coming their way and instead claim that this is some sort of coordinated attempt to silence them, which is actually what Matt Walsh did here, funnily enough. He tweeted, "We are now wrapping up week 2 of some conservatives on this site focusing most of their fire on me. It's pretty clear that this is a coordinated effort at this point. I'm not sure what their endgame is or why they've decided I'm the villain of all people." This is actually something that drives me mad about the left and the right, and you know, both sides do it. Commentators on both sides of the aisle do it, and really the motivation is to rally your own people around you. You know, you want to get better support from your people by making it as if it's you versus all these other people, so you know your community will come in and save you. But they turn, you know, criticism into a conspiracy when it's not that at all. We'll probably come back to this if I have time, but if not, just know that it annoys the crap out of me. But more importantly, in this case, Matty boy, this isn't coordinated. People just disagree with you, which, to be fair, is absolutely okay. And up until very recently, this was the status quo. People would say something and then other people would disagree. There'd be a discussion and maybe there would be some minds changed. I really think the nature of being an online commentator is that people are going to disagree with you. That sort of, you know, comes with the territory. People disagree with me all the time. You know, admittedly, sometimes in the most heinous way humanly possible, but they are still entitled to disagree with the things that I say. The idea that there should be no disagreement in right-wing circles was the exact road that the left decided to take, which led it to its current messed up state.
I cried.
The expected adherence to particular views and ideas became so ingrained and so extreme that people were afraid of expressing a contrary opinion, even marginally contrary, because they were afraid of retribution or being attacked by their own. So they stayed quiet while the most radical among them started leading the pack, which is why now you have all of these disenfranchised liberals who are running around, like Bill Maher, for example, who's been left out in the cold. And you have all of these Democrats quietly, I mean, they're trying, but they're quietly saying to the rest of the party, can we please reroute what we're doing here? Because you guys have gone off the rails.
Basic problem we have in America is conservatives think the liberals are insane, and they're not completely wrong. Now, I don't think most liberals are insane, but neither do they make it clear they disapprove of the ones who are. And their cowardice in not marginalizing their own crazies has been their downfall.
And so my concern is, if we can't even call out the bad ideas on our own side and shine a light on them, how are we supposed to move forward and enact meaningful, successful, positive change in the future? I think I have said this before, but I'm going to say it again. I want to be able to shine a light on crap ideas, even if those crap ideas are mine. Saying nothing because of blind loyalty is a bad thing, actually. And I think some people kind of felt like that was playing out with relation to Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson recently. Tucker, who had been speaking at TP USA events in Charlie's stead, went viral for the way he responded to a person who asked a question.
I don't understand it because it makes no sense. Like, you're worth $50 million.
I'm not worth $50 million.
30 to 50.
Get off the internet, son. Don't stop believing that stuff.
Oh.
$50 million?
Go back to cable news.
Sorry.
No, but I'm just, look.
Okay, you're too annoying. You're too annoying. So I like the last chick who like disagreed with me, and then we could have like a normal conversation.
All right.
But you're like telling me you're worth $50 million. What? Stop.
Okay, you got real defensive there. I just read a number that's like a lot of money. Jesus Christ, calm down.
Don't use that phrase.
You're worth.
We're done.
I know some of you are going to get stuck on the Jesus Christ thing and say that taking the Lord's name in vain is a big problem and that Tucker reacted appropriately in this context, but I disagree with that, to be honest with you. Even if you find it offensive, even if, you know, it hurts to hear that kind of thing, I think you can handle it in a much better way than this rather than telling someone effectively to F off, which is kind of what happened here. And, you know, this doesn't change anyone's mind, by the way. This is not an effective way of having a debate or a conversation. This is just you finding a reason to shut down the argument because you don't want to have it anymore. Yours truly admittedly tweeted about this, saying that it makes me sad, and this definitely isn't the way, and this is certainly not the way of trying to fill Charlie's void, the void that he left. But Megyn Kelly also decided to weigh in, and she tweeted saying that no one is expecting any of the people subbing for Charlie to imitate Charlie, which is fair and true, but Tucker is standing in for his friend despite his own busy life and not without risk to Tucker's own safety. I think the appropriate reaction is just thank you and may God bless you and keep you safe, TC. Again, I don't think this is it. I don't think this is the right way of interpreting this situation, and you know, I'm not going to go out of my way to thank somebody who I think is undoing somebody else's work. And I know that me saying these things and disagreeing with these situations is going to upset some people here, and that's okay. You are allowed to like who you want to like, and you are allowed to follow who you want to follow, and I'm allowed to disagree with them. I mean, that's the beauty of all of this. But, you know, I think if we're being honest with ourselves for a second here, some of this is just not helpful to this movement. You know, treating people this way is not helpful, and actually, if we're being real, this kind of flies in the face of what Charlie Kirk was all about. I think it's unhelpful to not be able to say, hey, I don't think this behavior is great, and I'm not going to thank you for acting this way. This is comparable to something else Megyn Kelly said on the We the Fifth podcast a few weeks ago, where she said that she will not condemn her friends, specifically Tucker. She also added that she's basically not sort of like this policing agent for the right wing, which, again, I think that's completely fair. But when asked about Candace, she said that she doesn't know her that well, but she had a nice conversation with her recently, and basically said that she feels for her because she's a mother of 3 young kids with a big show.
Now, as for my decision to platform Tucker, too bad, too bad. I love him. We're friends. I don't think he's an anti-Semite at all. Don't listen to all of Tucker's shows. I don't listen to all your shows. I don't have that many hours in the day. I don't really care. I think Tucker's a very important, valuable voice in the national conversation. I'm thrilled.
Do you think
He
Candace,
has a platform.
I think Candace is
So
apart
I
from
don't
Tucker.
know
Yeah.
her. I don't really know her that well. Although I will tell you, we recently had a very nice exchange before all this. And I was just reminded in my own head that Candace is a young mom of like 3 young kids. She's under a lot of pressure. She's got a big show. She's been under attack
legal
since she came onto the public airwaves, and she's been under attack constantly. And it's my prerogative if I say to myself, that is not someone I wish to attack.
Not that I want to get into anything related to Candace and her podcast in this video, but I do think that arguing that she's a mother of 3 is somewhat irrelevant. It in no way excuses the things that Candace or anybody else has to say on issues, and it never will. I really genuinely don't want to pick a fight here because that's not what this video is about at all, but I do think it's a bit weird to comment on someone's behavior when you haven't actually taken the time at all to watch their content and to understand the kind of things that they're saying, more or less, that could just be me. To be perfectly clear here too, I am not expecting Megyn Kelly or really anybody else to do or say anything that they don't want to do and say. I am not determining that she is now the arbiter of truth and must police her friends. If she doesn't want to disagree with them and she doesn't want to say anything about the things that they're saying, that's completely her choice. But broadly speaking, loyalty means nothing if you have to silence yourself to achieve it. And in my mind, blind loyalty kind of makes us the equivalent of little sheepies being led to slaughter. I see people on the right say all the time that they want the left to stop the crazies within their ranks from doing and saying certain things, and yet they won't apply that same logic to their own side. And to be clear with you, not every disagreement has to be out and loud and in the public. I mean, Lord knows that when I disagree with people that I know personally, I just message them and say, hey man, I don't think this is 100% correct, or hey man, where are you getting this from? And then we have a nice conversation, because I mean, I'm really of the belief that there's sort of no need for me to, stir up drama, but I'm more than happy to say these things to people behind the scenes. And I'll admit it, sometimes I look at things that are objectively crazy that someone has said and I'm like, I'm not even gonna go there, because honestly, I don't want the drama that's gonna bring. And you know what? Maybe that makes me a bit of a crybaby person, because I don't want to deal with the drama, because it's so annoying. The bottom line for me is that if the left became as radical as it is now because it failed to call out the craziest people and opinions among them, if we do the same, how are we any different? If we forsake our own principles to appease our friends, do we even really have any principles? None of this is to say that I agree with the Puritan position on being right-wing, where you have to have every single idea and believe in every single facet of a movement in order to be part of a movement. I don't subscribe to that, and I don't think that most people subscribe to that. Like I said at the beginning of this video, most people are just people who have a bunch of ideas about a bunch of things. But the extreme behavior, the extreme rhetoric, the extremeness of, I guess, where the poles of the political spectrum are heading, these are the things that I think they deserve to be called out, and I think that they deserve to be picked apart. Because if these ideas can't stand up to scrutiny, then I don't think that they deserve to be front and center in any political movement. And none of this is to say that we drag each other through the mud and do purity testing and attack one another for having a difference of opinion. The most important thing that we can do is have meaningful civil discourse like we used to. And it's kind of funny because that's the exact thing that so many conservative figures have preached about for the longest time. So admittedly, there was a ton more here that I wanted to say about conspiracies and encouraging you all to be discerning about who is saying what and why and what their motivations are and who's paying them and all this fun stuff, but I think I have talked quite enough for whenever you're watching this, in the morning or at night or in the afternoon. So instead, I will leave you all with this. Probably the intelligent way to address infighting would be to do so privately, but unfortunately, due to the nature of the internet, we don't really have that ability. Ultimately for me, I point blank do not want to unify with people who hold ideas and values that I think are antithetical to the overall society that I would like to live in, regardless if you're on the left or the right. I have no interest in unifying with people whose primary objective is to divide, either for financial gain or just for the hell of it. I have approximately zero interest in doing that. But that doesn't mean for a second that I have to agree 100% of the way, 100% of the time with the people I am comfortable to stand alongside. Because, well, that would be insane and boring. And more importantly, I just don't think that's particularly human. Humans disagree on all sorts of stuff, and it doesn't mean that we can't still want for the same things at the end of the day. Ultimately, I do think that aligning and unifying with radicals, allowing their voices to take over, allowing for their ideas to go unchallenged, is probably not so useful. Is probably not going to end up so well. I think it will make things very difficult going forward, and I think it will have a very negative effect on future elections, or at least just when it comes to normalizing right-wing ideas, views, and talking points. And I think really importantly, if we don't challenge bad ideas, then it leads to the assumption that these are normal, mainstream conservative talking points and principles. And I absolutely don't want that either. So in the end, while I understand the calls to unify the right, I just don't think that that's going to work out in practice. I think that some of the people who are leading the charge here have some quite bad opinions and ideas that deserve to be questioned. And I think that in a functional, normal society, we should be questioning these things, and we should be completely okay with that becoming the status quo. Now, on that note, and before I open the floor to all of you, this is just a reminder, check out Beam using the link in the description. I love Beam. I do love most of the sponsors on this channel, but I freaking love Beam. I genuinely wish that I'd taken some last night, because I'm sure that I would have had an infinitely better sleep than I got, but I didn't, so that's on me. But if you would like better sleep, absolutely check them out. Now I open the floor to all of you. What do you all think? I'm slightly scared to read your comments. I'm looking forward to it, but I'm slightly scared. Do you agree with me, or are you on my side of this issue where you think, yeah, I'm not unifying with some of these people. I don't agree. Their opinions are too wacky for me. Do you agree with Matt Walsh and you think that the left is such a massive problem that we do need to unify in order to take down their ideas? Do you think that maybe there's just a middle ground between these two viewpoints that probably will have a better outcome than being polarized here? And what do you generally make of this issue overall? As always, if you have made it this far in the video, congratulations. I always like having you along for the full ride, even when I do this much talking. If you are new here and you are not subscribed already and you would like to see more of me and more of this kind of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel, as well as leaving this video a like and a comment, because I do read the majority of them and I like hearing your scary feedback. Of course, like I always say, I hope you wonderful little chickadee people stay safe and well and make good choices, because those are very importante. Have a fabulous weekend, and I will see your little shmoo faces in the next video.